All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. We have a really packed agenda, so we will start right away. Thank you for the introduction. This is a slide just for reference for people downloading the PDF later. Let's get right into it. So this agenda is what we're going to cover today, and I'm going to get back to it from time to time, so no need to memorize it. You'll be rolling along, and it should be fine. So first, information stealer malware. What is it? What is the phenomenon? So a user downloads a piece of malware, usually cracked software, sometimes something else, we'll see later. Then that piece of malware is executed on the victim's computer, and that malware, this is why we call them information stealer malware. It steals everything that it can access on the computer, doesn't require administrative rights, although if it has it, it will steal even more. But so it grabs credential, crypto wallets, password managers information, like everything it can get about the system, clipboard, and many other things. These things are then packaged up and then uploaded to C2 infrastructure, most often Telegram. And so these are the artifacts of an infection of information stealer malware, which is what we're going to focus today. And these individual logs, they are packaged together and resold by cyber criminals again on Telegram. So there's like two levels of Telegram stuff happening over here. Now, the way it's packaged up is you buy a subscription to a specific threat actor Telegram on a Telegram, and then this person will daily give you a zip that contains all of the individual infection of that the stealer campaign did. And so today, what we're doing is we're looking at these artifacts, post-infection artifacts, and we're looking at individual stealer logs. And stealer log will contain all types of information, like what I previously mentioned, like processes, passwords, system information, and stuff like that. But today's talk, we're focusing on screenshots. And then why screenshots? These are the mid-heist selfies, right? So threat actor thought at some point, like, oh, it would be nice to take a screenshot of the computer while the malware is detonating. Probably it would add it to detect sandboxes because a sandbox is really easy to spot if you have a screenshot of a victim. And maybe it also gives them more context, more information. And so when they added that feature, they were probably like this. Like they were like, oh yeah, this is so great, you know? But when we look at it for us, this is more like this. This is like they are taking a selfie of a crime scene. There's so much information we can extract from that screenshot. And or like this, right? They are basically over there, you know, pushing their crime. So what does such a screenshot look like? Here's one. So you can see here, this is YouTube. It talks about Fortnite software. It talks about the fact that it's undetected, you know, and it has a link to download and a password. Here's another one. So here you have a mega link with the link to the zip, and it says that it's an office suite crack. You have the whole link is visible, and you can extract it automatically if you do the OCR stuff. And so when we realized that, or when we wanted to apply that at scale, we were like, oh my God, the threat actor are basically giving us, you know, something we need in order to protect our customers or you know, people online. So the screenshot, it contains all the clues and hints needed to solve the story of what happened for the infection. And we happen to have a ton of them, like by being infiltrated on these Telegram and cybercrime groups. We have over 11 different malware families, 15 million screenshots. But so then we realize, oh my God, analyzing a screenshot by one is time consuming and it's difficult, right? It's too much information. But then we're like, oh, we're 2025. Everything is solved by AI and LLM. So why not do it, right? We should use an LLM for that problem. And so this is where Estelle's genius is coming in. And she built something that she's going to talk about. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So I'll walk you through the LLM pipeline to show you what it looks like actually. So we do have the screenshot that we feed into a first LLM layer. it outputs a formatted description that we then use for the second LLM layer to identify the infection vector, as well as the theme of the infection. Then comes an IoC checking pipeline to discriminate between live IoCs, those that are just dead, and those containing only the theme of the infection. But if you look at the pipeline, you can see we have 2 LLM layers. And you might be wondering, why 2? And that's a very good question. And I will tell you the story of why we came up with 2 LLM layers instead of just 1. When I came into this project, I thought, as any human not familiar with LLM would do, I just translated my thoughts to the LLM as if it was a human that would carry the task. And the project was pretty simple. We had a simple task, and it was identify the infection vector. So at first, the pipeline was just one single layer of LLM, but the LLM did not think nor act as humans do. And I'll explain to you why with a simple screenshot, the one we saw just a few moments ago. As humans, when you see a screenshot, you first assess what's going on. So you see it's a YouTube video, you see it's about Fortnite, and you can see it involves a download. Now, as humans, what we did was to visually assess what is going on inside the screenshot. Then, once we're familiar with what's happening inside, we look in the details. So we can see there's a download link, and we can see at the bottom that the archives have already been downloaded. And based on field knowledge, we know when reading the names of those archives that it's suspicious, and it's probably how the device was infected. What we did here is a second task. We pointed out the infection vector based on field knowledge. And now we understand why the single layer LLM pipeline did not work. Because with a single layer, the LLM has to carry out 2 tasks disguised as 1 task in the human mind. And that brings us to a very important key insight for you guys about LLM. An LLM can't just figure it out. You have to translate your analyst intuition into instruction if you want the LLM to carry out the task properly. So now we have 2 layers, one for the first task, visually assessing the screenshots, and the second to point out the actual infection vector. Now that we know this lesson, we came to prompt engineering. Let's talk about the first layer. We visually screened the screenshot we analyzed first, and we saw that we could categorize them into 3 classes. Web-based content, so a screenshot only displaying a web page. File system, and the last one was hybrid, so you have both content. For the web content, we wanted to capture the details about the page to see if it was suspicious. So we asked for a general description, any link that could be visible, and the browser tabs in the screenshot. For the second type, the file system, we asked again the description, but also the names of the file in the file explorer. And in case it was an installer on the screenshot, we asked to pick up which software was being installed. And for the hybrid, we asked all of the above. So now we have 4 elements we asked the first layer to pick up: scene description, file explorer and installer, links, and browser tab identification. Before launching the first layer, we thought we might need to instruct or at least hint the second layer what could be suspicious. So we added a 5th element, and we asked the LLM to point out anything that looked suspicious, and we explained how to point those out. So any links to a file sharing, any YouTube video mentioning a crack, for example, anything like that. And this is how the prompt was basically designed. At the top, you can see we ask for the main content, what's happening in the screenshot. Then you have the part about the files and program. Under anything about the links, then the browser tabs, and finally the suspicious element. And if we feed this screenshot to the first layer, we get this output. In the main content, it identified the ESET security window as well as the YouTube video. the file program was also identified, as well as the YouTube video. We have both tabs, and in the suspicious element, it highlighted the YouTube video as well as the license key entry prompt. So that's great. We have our first LLM layer doing the formatted description. And now we can feed this description into the second LLM layer. However, if you're familiar with LLM or any machine learning, you know that the input you give has to be perfect if you want to get good results in the end. And since the input to the second is the output to the first layer, we want to avoid that kind of scenario, where the first layer output sabotages the second layer because it could be just plainly wrong. So as much as we wanted to go straight into the second layer, we had to assess how good the first layer performed. So we jumped into the assessment. We assessed the first layer on 1,000 screenshots, and the results were pretty good. For scene description, 96% of those screenshots were really greatly described. We had 100% accuracy for File Explorer, as well as for links, and the suspicious elements were greatly identified in 95% of the case. However, browsing tab identification was very inconsistent. And what I mean is, it only identified correctly everything in 30% of the screenshots. In 32 of them, we were missing information, and in 36 of them, it was plainly wrong. So if we see an example on a failure for a screenshot, and we zoom in to the red form, we have 3 correctly identified browsing tabs, and then the LLM resorted to identifying the bookmarks, which was an unwanted behavior, and it even failed to identify the last browsing tab. So it was indeed very inconsistent. We had to do something about it, and we began to think how to make it better. And before putting in the effort, we had this crazy thought: what if we just try to delete it before trying to correct it and see how the whole pipeline would basically perform? And so we did, and we rerun the assessment, and the accuracy did not change. So we decided to just delete the browser tab identification. So we have the assessment of the visual and the formatted description, and now we can jump in the second layer of the LLM. The second layer is purposed to identify the vector as well as the theme from the formatted description. We also asked it to basically format it so we could exploit it later on. And if we look at the output, first you have the vector, in this case, the file sharing platform, and the theme is basically the name of the software that was downloaded from the platform. Now that's great. We have the second layer as well as the output formatted. Great success. Now we went and run the pipeline. And when we went to check the IoCs it returned, many of them were just plainly dead. And that was a big problem. Because having an IoC feed is interesting only if it's live, because then you can study and maybe remediate it. So we realized the IoC feed was not so great in the beginning. So we had to introduce the IoC checking to solve that problem. The IoC checking would aim to discriminate between the live, the theme, and the dead IoCs, so we could curate basically the IoC feed.
And this is me. So yeah, when looking at discriminating the IoC problem, we were dealing with a bunch of URLs. So most of these URLs were part of 3 different categories: file sharing platforms, YouTube videos, and then everything else, right? So we had heuristics specifically per type of category. Fortunately for us, the file sharing platforms, they have really clear error messages and they respect HTTP status codes. So we were able to discriminate live and dead based on these messages. So we could label them directly as dead IOC. We still keep them in case for IR purposes or whatnot, but we're clearly labeling them as such. Then there's when it's live, and it could ask for a decryption key, or there could be some social engineering ploy, but we will still consider it live because the user will enter the decryption key. As you'll see later in many of the examples, like the key is oftentimes in the YouTube description, but then the password, the file is able to be downloaded from Mega. So you need to copy the password and then put it in Mega, which makes the takedown process and the detection harder for these platforms. But as a human, it's very easy to carry on a password, especially if you're trying to crack an expensive piece of software. You will be able to do it, right? But so all of these are considered live because eventually the person can infect themselves. And then the last one, others. So we are hunting for things that are indicators of a download, so download buttons and stuff like that. And then we will consider them live if we are able to do so. For YouTube now, again, there's clear error message, so very simple heuristics to say the video is no longer available. So we are able to label them as dead. We need to support the platform differently in file sharing because of that, but still very easy to do. Then there's the when it works, when the video is still up, if there is a download link, this is what we're gonna store, not necessarily the YouTube video. So we have, another thing that goes in and extract that. So this would be considered live. But then sometimes the download link is removed, and like I think these guys are trying to avoid being detected by Google, and so they will like change the video description in order to fool whatever Google's trying to do when trying to prevent fraud like that. But so if there's no link, then what we will do is we will consider the theme. And why theme is important is because it allows us to track campaign, and like with any fraud, telling people, hey, this is happening, like cracked office is infecting people. If people are aware of it, the behavior will change and it will reduce the chances of them infecting it. So storing that theme and tracking campaign and talking about campaign is something important for online protection. Now let's show you a demo. I rigged the demo a little bit because normally like this runs on a server and has no output. So what I did with the demo is I put in like show us the screenshot when you analyze it, and also show us the answer of ChatGPT on the console so we can look at it. All right, here it goes. Is it automatically playing? No. Let's try that. Okay, I hope internet works well. All right. So it's starting. We're passing it the first screenshot. Okay, so this is a screenshot of someone looking at a zip file. And so we have the crack, and it's a 1 gigabyte file. This avoids detection. Now, if we look at what OpenAI ChatGPT responded, the LLM responded. So it says Microsoft Office 2019, specific version. This is open. This the file installer layer. The URL was extracted. And so that's the result of the first layer. Now, if we continue, it will say dead IoC, so that link didn't yield the download link. And it will say, though, the vector was Microsoft Office crack software. Now, the second screenshot is just two, so stick with me. So this is clearly Adobe Photoshop cracked again software. And so the LLM managed to extract the URL and extract the context, Adobe Photoshop plus neural filters, and then says this is likely what's happened here, right? So it's just doing that, in a loop, looking at it. And so here's a look at the JSON files that it outputs. And so we add in like the malware family, that's the information that we already have from the stealer log. But so the URLs are in there. And then all of the links that the crawl chain that we will do will also be part of the output. And so with this, this is basically like the whole thing we built. Okay, that's gonna be tough. Can I put the slides back on? Okay. Ah, come on. And so this was delayed. We had added sleeps in it so that we could all see. But still, this is like several calls to the LLM model, and so it takes a bit of some time, you know, to do. But then once we let it run for weeks, we had tons of stuff to look at. And so Estelle is going to talk to you about some of the campaigns.
So we let the pipeline run on tens of thousands of screenshots, and we were able to track some of the campaigns, but most importantly, see the tactics threat actors use to infect the most people. So we entered the infostealer playbook, basically. Two things we noticed inside that playbook is lure theme used to bait the user into downloading the software. And the first theme was cracked software. Legitimate software and mainstream software are often costly, and many people want to avoid paying for those licenses. And that's great, because cracked software costs $0, but it has a twist. And so in the human mind, they would compromise their own security because they don't want to pay for something they could technically get for free. So here, threat actors prey on users' willingness to bypass those legitimate licensing fees at the cost of their very own security. The software we saw the most often in screenshots were mainstream ones and creative ones, such as the Office Suite, Vegas Pro, Midjourney, and sometimes Filmora among those. And all of those are mainstream. And targeting a mainstream software means you have a lot of potential victims. And that's a very strategic decision here. Because targeting a mainstream product ensures a large pool of potential victims worldwide. The second lure theme we saw in the screenshots were gaming cheats and modes. Those cheats and modes targeted mainstream games again to ensure maximum pool of victim. And you had games like Fortnite, Valorant, and Minecraft. And choosing those types of games is again a very strategic decision because they are gateways for people of all ages into gaming. They are relatively simple of access and simple to play. And most importantly, the graphics are suitable for a younger audience. Interestingly, they all have skins, weapons, and sometimes modes, and they're introduced very frequently, but they are paid for. And considering the younger demographic playing those games, they often lack the intent or even the mean to pay for them, but they still want them. And this makes the demographic ideal to be a victim of those information stealer logs. So the gaming lesson here is, if it's free and shady, you are likely the victim, and dare I say, even the product. Next, after lure theme, we also seen distribution strategies. And the first one we saw was YouTube, and it was used as a massive distribution system. We've seen titles of YouTube videos like those, and it's often emphasized as genuine, it worked, and most importantly, it's 100% safe. It looks like this. You've seen these screenshots already thrice today, but they often emphasize and contain a download link, the password to the archive, and instructions coupled with the video. And we have 3 common denominators among all those YouTube videos we've seen. 1, it's always free. 2, it works even if it's free. And 3, disabling AV is needed and it is safe. Again, seems legit. Here, YouTube's reach and tutorial-driven content makes it the perfect launchpad for infostealer malware, because humans often seek visual guides to guide them through any installation and any procedures they're not familiar from. The second distribution strategy we saw was leveraging Google Ads to sponsor malicious websites. I'm sure you're familiar with Google Ads. When a threat actor builds a malicious copy of a website, They leverage Google Ads to place it at the top of a user's results, so they're most likely to click on it. And that's a very interesting tool because you can target a time frame sometimes and even the location. And here Google Ads give the threat actors a fast lane to users' trust because they place malicious content where users expect safety, which is at the top of the results. Now that we've seen the lure and the distribution techniques, we could track successful campaigns using those techniques. And those are 2 case studies or textbook examples so you guys can understand how powerful those techniques are. How we found the 2 campaigns, we simply looked at the IoC feed, and the same IoC and theme came back over and over and over again. And when we looked at the screenshots, we could piece together the history behind what happened. On top of this, both campaigns were omnipresent in the screenshot analyzed. They consisted of more than 5 and 6% of all infections we had. So we decided to show them to you guys. First, the mid-journey. Each screenshot I will present to you is from a different infected device. So the infections start by the user searching for mid-journey. Then they get hit with a sponsored ad. And you can see at the bottom the legitimate sites is here. But the user still chooses to click on the sponsored one. They're presented with a very well-made copy of the website, but there's one little detail that's important. It is possible that the computer security system may falsely trigger. Here the threat actor is playing with your mind when you enter this page. It's preparing you to accept that you will have to disable the AV for it to work. But well, the user believes in that, and they click on the download, and they're given an executable, which they click again. And then they launch, but it doesn't work, which is suspicious. But then you remember, you were warned, and the threat actor did its job very well, because now you say, oh, it's normal, it doesn't work. The AV wasn't disabled. So you search on how to disable the AV, you disable it, and it still doesn't work. And it doesn't work, so you search because you become anxious. And you discover it was indeed not really Mid-Journey you got, but an infostealer. Here the Mid-Journey campaign shows a trending AI image generating, which will attract most users. It created a copy, laced malware in it, created a copy of the official website, leveraged Google Ads to place it at the top, so they infected the most people they could. The second campaign was Blitz Java. At first, we saw many screenshots with the Java installer. We even saw some with the official looking website. And I was very suspicious because we thought, okay, was Java compromised? Because that would have been a big scoop. No, again, the same old trick. Sponsored ad. Here you have 2 different languages, meaning 2 different countries. And if you look, it's the same domain. And under, again, you have the official and legitimate website. Here is one page of Java. And here is another one. And I'm sure you couldn't tell which one was the legit one, even if you could compare now. But if you look at the details, you can see some of them. We're missing a developer resources, some elements on the left, some spacing. The front end of the button is different. You're missing a hyperlink. And the file size is different. But if you're a user and you only clicked on one of them and you couldn't compare them, you can't possibly know it's a fake one. You will definitely fall for it. And that's the art of it, because it's very well made. So if we recap, the user clicks on the sponsored ad, gets presented with the well-made copy, download the software, and they get an archive, which is suspicious in itself, but then you have the executable inside. So you click, and then you have a legit-looking installer. But if you look closely, the logo of the executable is not the right one. It's a different one. So when you let the installer go, and it doesn't work, Then you get anxious again. So you search. I tried installing Java, but it doesn't work. And again, it doesn't work because you were pawned. We decided to name the campaign Blitz Java because all the infections happen all around the world and in a time frame on only 19 hours. And when we looked at the days those 19 hours spanned, they were from February 11th until the 12th. And if you look on the calendar closely, it falls on a weekend. And the decision to use a weekend for the sponsored ad is a strategic one, because weekend means more leisure time, more time away from work, more time away from school, more time to go on the computer, and more time response for any security teams that saw the infection. So these two successful campaigns use simple tricks that we discussed before. You target a mainstream software and its legitimate sites, create a copy of both, then you leverage distribution strategies, either in Google Ads to place it at the top of results, or you proxy it using a YouTube video. And this brings you the most potential victims. The key insight here on how they infect people is that threat actors still rely on simple psychological tactics because they simply still work so well. Why would you pain yourself by doing a technical exploit when all you need is just manipulate people and it's so easy?
So moving on to the strengths and limits of what we built, which we need to recognize. So the screenshot is the biggest strength, but also the primary limitation, right? So what is the advantage of the screenshot is that this is like agnostic of code changes. So let's say you have traditional malware analysis where you need to look at the code and make sure, and the bad guys with the packer, they will like, the malware will change a lot, and so you need to have generic signatures and all that stuff, expensive work. But so if you rely on signatures, you will be bypassed and you will stop detecting the threat. Whereas with the LLM analyzing the screenshot, we are still able to track campaigns across malware changes because we are after the fact that they got infected, right? So it's robust against the code changes. Now, so tracking different malware families, as long as they have a screenshot, we're good, right? We're good to track them. So it works across different malware families and across code changes. However, as you can guess, if we don't have a screenshot, if bad guys listening to this recognize, you know what, this feature is not that useful, people are not buying our logs for this, we will remove the screenshot entirely, and then this stuff is gonna make us blind, right? But also more so than just the existence of the screenshot themselves, there's the quality. In some cases, there's nothing to be said about the screenshot. It looks like a victim, the desktop has, someone's clearly using that computer, but we have no idea of what happened. And so this is another, part of the pipeline where we're just like, we have no clue. So that's the limit of the approach, and we can't do anything in these cases, right? So we rely on the quality is something important for this to work. Here's the table summarizing it. Now you're asking, how much does this cost, right? You're spending all that LLM money. So it takes 5 seconds to process a screenshot, 5 to 10 seconds, and it's 0.3 cents per image. So all of the prompting, the 2 layers, everything included is about 0.3 cents per image. And with cloud, this thing is probably likely to go down, and the results are probably going to improve with the new models and everything. So yeah, moving on to the conclusion and the takeaways. Okay, and we have a little surprise at the end. But so, infostealer are quite the threat, right? We heard about. I have 5 minutes. All right. We heard about Redline and Luma C2 being taken down, but they're still super active. Luma is still isn't. We are collecting more Luma after the takedown than before. So something's happening online right now with information stealer malware for sure. But so it's trending. But as long as the threat actor they keep sharing screenshots, right, we will be able to track the campaign and the themes. And so we do so using the different layers, and it allows us to identify IOC at scale and to track campaigns. Now, having a nice takeaway slide for you here. So I think awareness is really important. Like, and you saw we mostly talked about crack software, but we think that organizations should more insist on having their user have safer behavior online, including being aware that cracked software is dangerous. And a lot of the victims are IT people who think they know better, or who cracked software, 20 years ago and think it's okay. This is all malware ridden nowadays. And also, disabling AV should be something that triggers your response, right? You should be like, oh, if I need to disable AV, something's wrong here. We think also that we applied LLMs to one cybersecurity artifact, but I think everyone here can apply LLM to their own cybersecurity artifact that matters to them. And they need to encode the analyst intuition in very specific instructions. And so this is a step that you need to take very carefully, but if you do that, you'll be successful at applying LLM. So what we did today was focusing on the screenshot. But now, what we want to work on next is like all of the other artifact part of a stealer log, right? One LLM for screenshots. How about the software installed, the processes, the history, the system information? If we analyze all of these and we apply the analyst mindset on every one of them, because they're very different artifacts, you need to apply a very different mindset for it. Then we combine this and we ask the LLM, what happened? How did they get compromised, right? And we're calling this project, and it's already in a working state. We're calling it Sherlog or Sherlock, and when we intend to submit it at Black Hat Europe, the CFP closes next week or this week. So this is gonna be something we'll talk about later, and we want to share it, right? Sharing is caring. But so one more thing, closing out. All of the results that you saw today were in a paper that was released, and it's available on arXiv. So Estelle wrote the paper, including the evaluation and all of that. So if you're interested in learning more, you can check that out. And we will have time to take a couple of questions, and I have a special gift from NordSec, 4 questions, NordSec badge, hardware badge, if you are interested. So thank you for your time. Yes.
BFA. That's incredible. Can you help me understand a little bit about what that means, what this infostealer context means beyond the initial attack? We're talking about the threats. Tell me a bit more about why we might care.
So knowing campaigns and like the infection vectors and letting people know, like with the URLs, you can block them with your corporate proxy. The campaign is more of an awareness thing, so we'll be able to write blog posts and say, oh, right now they're targeting this software, make people aware of it if you're using it or whatever. But so, and then with the downloads, we intend on eventually like detonating them. And so if it's not covered by AV, because in some cases it's not covered by AV. And so if we detonate them or upload them to VirusTotal, then the community will be able to defend. And it's like all of things cybersecurity, it's a cost game. So if we're fast and we're analyzing quickly and reacting quickly, we're gonna make them spend more money on Google Ads, and their campaign will be shorter lived, and it will cost them more because we're gonna fight back to the bad guys. So that's the context. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for the lecture. Do you guys report it to the authorities or to whoever to mitigate it and take it down?
So some cases we do, but usually not really. And like some stuff to like big brands like YouTube, GitHub, and stuff like that. But most of the time it's quiet for months, and then we get an automated response like months after. But we don't have good contacts necessarily, I think, at this point. So maybe someone from Google would like to chat, and we would be happy to send them everything. We extract the YouTube videos and everything. And again, 15 million screenshots, right? Something will have to be automated. And then is there appetite for us to build this or not? We have to figure out. But I obviously a feed of high signal would be something good to build for these partners eventually. Yeah.
I think we have to go to the wrap-up room because the time is up. So we're going to get scolded if we say too much. Well, I'd be happy to answer any question you guys have.
Yeah, so wrap up is down at the end of the hall over there. So just walk up there and we'll be there in a couple seconds. Thank you.